It's still loading. Give me a second.
Good
Wait.
start. Hi.
I had to make it public. I don't know why it does that.
Yeah.
Okay, we should be good now. Let me see.
Yeah. All right. It's working. Cool.
All right, perfect.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah, we've been gone for a while, but week 0 is upon us, so thought we'd hop in here and talk some football. I know a lot of people are kind of not a big fan of week 0 because the games aren't the best, but the way I look at it, you've got Caleb Williams, who's a Heisman frontrunner, which we're going to get into here in a second, playing against, I think they're playing like San Jose State, which won't be a great game, but it'll be nice to get to see Caleb Williams after winning a Heisman Trophy last year. And then Notre Dame plays Navy. I think that's actually the first game. And Sam Hartman is also on the Heisman list, and Notre Dame has some decently high expectations this year. So it'll be nice to see those two guys. But segueing into our Heisman predictions here. We've talked about this before, so I'm just going to kind of give – this is our final Heisman predictions. All the final stuff we're getting out of the way, like we'll have our final conference champion predictions, final playoff predictions, just so we have it all on record and we can tell everybody we were right or wrong. Probably more likely to be wrong, but –
Oh, absolutely. I mean, hey, you're shooting for like a small fish in a big pond at this point, right? Like you're – unless you're going with the safe option, which I mean, I guess I kind of am. It's really hard to get it right. Like,
yeah, exactly. And anytime I look at these lists and I'm like, oh, I mean, why are the odds like this? Fool's gold, pretty much. Vegas is more than most of the time they're right.
So I will say too, it's even harder in years that follow, where like a guy that won the Heisman last year is still in school, like not a junior or senior, because they come back and then like they're obviously the favorite, but they're also definitely not going to win it again. So that's just my in my opinion. Vegas disagrees with me, but in my opinion,
so jumping into it,
2 years in a row.
Caleb Williams is the favorite at plus 500. Very hard to win a Heisman 2 years in a row. I don't think it's ever been done.
Was it Archie Griffin?
Archie Griffin was the last person to do it, so it's been a really long time.
I think.
Yeah, he was the only other person to do it. So the fact that Caleb Williams is favorite plus 500 is crazy. And then Tyler and I were talking about this before. You got Jade Daniels at 2 at plus 1,000, which, I mean, the odds, the gap between the first two people is kind of significant. And then you've got Jordan Travis and Quinn Ewers at plus 1,200, Cade Klubnik at plus 1,400, Penix at plus 1,600. And then you've got J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix, Drake May, and Sam Hartman all tied for plus 1,800. Right off the bat, Nix, May, and Penix are all guys that I would feel like would be more likely to win it than Williams, Daniels, Travis, and Ewers and Klubnik. But that's just kind of my 2 cents. I mean, Klubnik hasn't been this. I mean, he was only the starter towards the end of the year last year. Travis hasn't really shown that he can pass the ball too well, and the same kind of goes for Daniel. So, Bo Nix would be my prediction. I think I said that last year too, but he had a great year. And then obviously Drake May, I think, is right there with him, but both those guys are down towards the bottom. So Vegas just does not agree with me at all.
It's funny because like I had to fight back a little bit of laughter because of all these names. You listed the 3 that I had in my top 3 as well. Not the same order, I will say, thankfully. But when you said May, Nix, and Penix, I was like, oh my God, what are the chances? What are the Vegas odds on us having the same 3 Heisman finalists? Probably not that high. I do want to say Sam Hartman, that's ridiculous. Notre Dame is not going to be that good.
Yeah.
Carson Beck at plus 2,000, like the only chance he has, in my opinion, is just being on a good team.
It's just crazy that Drake May will probably be the second quarterback taken, and his odds are
Right.
just the same as Carson Beck, who is yet to start a single game for Georgia.
So I will say May is my pick, just because I think he's had the hype around him. He's obviously the most hyped up guy that's not Caleb Williams or Arch Manning, but he's not even going to play this year, so it is what it is. I think I've been Penix pilled. Michael Penix has got to be my second choice, right? My friend.
You were drinking the Washington Kool-Aid last year.
I have my friend in my ear every week. Washington's going to win the national championship. Michael Penix is going to win the Heisman. But then I thought about it, and like they do kind of have a QB friendly offense, and maybe the second best receiving core in college football. So it's a good like spot for a Heisman winner to be. And then if they overshine a little bit, right? Maybe they knock off USC. That's a good good kind of conversation starter, I'll say. And then Bo Nix, I think, like you said, you touched on earlier, he's having fun. He looks great. He's primed for a breakout season, etc. But I mean, he runs the ball just as well as as Jaden Daniels, Jordan Travis, any of the rushing quarterbacks. And also, I think he's much more refined as a passer. He's a little bit older than them, right? Like by a year. So it makes sense he's a little more refined, but just, I don't know. Especially, and I also think that Oregon has a chance to be a better team than LSU or Florida State. I don't get where the Florida State hype is coming from all of a sudden. Like I saw someone have them top 3.
I've seen a lot of people have them in their final playoff. The only thing I'll say for Florida State is they have probably a top 3 receiving core. They got Keon Coleman from Michigan State. He transferred there. They have and not just skill-wise, but like size-wise too. He's got some big targets to throw the ball to. So I think you're factoring in the fact that they're going to have a prolific passing game this year. But still, Travis, I think last year in half their games struggled to get more than like 200 passing yards.
Yeah, he's like Justin Fields in the NFL, where like he has some great games rushing, and then you look at the box stats and he has like 140 yards passing. And it's
and you look at a guy like Daniels and Travis, and you brought up the point Bo Nix rushing stats. I just looked him up. He had 500 yards and 14 touchdowns as a non-running quarterback. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's a guy that I think, like you stated, you would take higher than either one of these guys because he has 3,500 passing yards to go along with 500 rushing yards. And that's just it's about value. And I've said this before, and this is why Bo Nix would be my Heisman pick, is Oregon as a team. I think the Heisman, there shouldn't be other factors into it, such as like AP ranking or like playoffs. But I do think Oregon has a decent chance of making the playoffs this year compared to some of the other teams on the list, the quarterbacks on there. And so I think that combined with their AP ranking, I'm assuming it's going to be pretty high for most of the year, puts Bo Nix in the best position to win the Heisman. And I think that's super important. And Caleb Williams is obviously an incredible athlete, and USC's offense is going to be amazing this year, just like it was last year. But I think there's a lot of fatigue too. People want to see somebody new win it. They don't want to see the same person win it 2 years in a row, which sounds horrible, but it's so true. And then Bo Nix, the storyline too with him as a transfer. But I mean, the storyline too with Penix coming from Indiana, basically kind of saving his career.
Daniels. They all have the transfer.
Yeah, they do all have the transfer.
Caleb Williams.
Yeah, which I mean is more common now because people transfer a lot. But I just think Bo Nix is my pick to win, and I think he's in the best position out of anyone else on the list aside from maybe Caleb Williams to win the Heisman.
Well, yeah. So like just kind of real quick going through the different people that are above Bo Nix and like their team's outlook. USC, absolute wild card. Who knows? The Pac-12 just loves to cannibalize itself every year. So I spoiler alert, have USC in the playoffs, but they very well could drop like 2 games to Oregon and Washington and then miss the playoffs completely. LSU for Jaden Daniels. I'm not sold that they're going to do it again. I think that they had a pretty good finish to last year, but it's just I don't think Alabama's going to be as weak overall. Quarterback is a bigger question mark, but I think every other position is stronger than it was last year.
Yeah.
And coordinators are definitely very important, I will say.
And you don't get Alabama at home either.
Yeah, exactly. Florida State, I just don't get the hype. Texas, like they're, horns down.
The
whatever,
Texas
et cetera,
hype
et cetera.
this year, I thought the Texas hype last year was through the roof. This year, it's on like a whole other planet. It's in a whole other galaxy.
It's the cycle of Texas schools. They're gonna have a good opening game. Texas is back. Then they're gonna lose like 3 or 4 games, and then Texas is not back anymore. And then, honestly, as far as Quinn Ewers goes too, if he has even like one bad game, people will be screaming for Arch Manning.
Oh yeah, the margin for error for him is so small this year.
And then Michael Penix. I like Washington again. It's so I literally think
Washington guy.
The Pac-12 will send a team to the playoffs, and it's going to be USC, Washington, or Oregon. But it just depends on which one doesn't get beat up the most by the other two. And then J.J. McCarthy, I don't think they beat Ohio State again. I don't think that Michigan might be a one-loss team, right? Because they're pretty solid all around. They didn't really lose that much this last year. But I don't think they beat Ohio State a second time in a row. And I think that that's when it comes to Michigan and Ohio State, unless they're both 1-2, that game kind of determines who goes to the playoffs. So.
Yeah, and I think that also transitions kind of into our next conversation about conference champion predictions and what we think the conference championship game is going to be. You just talked about the Big Ten, so I know on here we have the ACC first, but starting off with the Big Ten, Ohio State's favored plus 165. Then you got Michigan plus 180 and Penn State at plus 600. I was kind of having this conversation with my brother the other day, who is a Penn State graduate. I come from a Penn State family. I think if I had to make a prediction who's going to win the Big Ten, I'm going to pick Ohio State because they have that question mark at quarterback like Alabama, but they have a really great receiving core.
Best receiving core in college football.
You got Marvin Harrison, who's one of the best receivers I've ever seen. Yeah, and then you've got a guy like Carnell Tate, too, I think, who's a sophomore. I just saw a clip today. He's a former 5-star guy. Marvin Harrison said that Carnell Tate is more far along in his sophomore year than Marvin Harrison Jr. was last year. And we saw what Marvin Harrison Jr. did last year. And I think defensively they'll be a lot better. I think Michigan State is the same team as last year. You got the same running backs, Donovan Edwards, Blake Corum. You got McCarthy quarterback.
Oh, and Michigan.
It sounds bad to say that they're boring, but I think it's Ohio State's going to be better this year. And I think Penn State's going to be night and day better. And I think Michigan kind of being in the same spot as they were last year might hurt them. I think that they have a high floor, but their ceiling's low compared to an Ohio State or a Penn State. And so I'm not going to pick them to win Big Ten. I'll pick Ohio State. But I think Michigan has another great year. I do think they lose one game, and it'll be the game they play at Penn State. But my Big Ten conference game is actually just going to be Ohio State versus Wisconsin, which I think is going to be a surprise to you. But I like Wisconsin with Luke Fickell. Luke Fickell's a great coach. They have Tanner Mordecai from SMU, and then they have Braylon Allen running the ball. So I think that side of the Big Ten is pretty much a crapshoot. I mean, you've got Nebraska, Wisconsin, and Iowa are probably your teams that are going to be duking it out for the Big Ten championship. But yeah, so Ohio State versus Wisconsin would be my prediction, and then Ohio State winning the Big Ten overall.
Yeah, I agree with the Ohio State pick. I think that, like I said, their only real tough game is normally Michigan. I actually don't know their exact schedule. Let me scan over it real quick while I'm talking, just to make sure that I'm not forgetting someone. I guess they play Notre Dame this year, and some would have you to believe that that's a big game. Oh, but Notre Dame is the ultimate fraud team, in my opinion, since like the 1980s. Every year, for some reason, because they used to be a big name school, kind of like USC before Caleb Williams. Every single year, because of the history behind their name, right? The brand, they get rated way too high, and then they get smacked, and then they aren't as good. Yeah, like you said, Ohio State has the best receiving core in football. I also really love. Oh my god, I'm gonna butcher this pronunciation. Are you ready? Hold on, I can't find his whole. Yeah, JT Tuimawaloa.
You're better at these pronunciations than I am.
Yeah, he had, I think, the single most dominant defensive game I've ever seen for a player last year. I think he had like 2 picks and like 5 sacks or something like that in one of the games.
Oh, against the backup offensive tackle. It was against
Penn State. Against Penn State, yeah.
Yeah, it was a dominant game. I remember sitting there thinking, who is this offensive tackle, and do we have anybody better than him? I mean, it was rough. I think the Big Ten's weird too because, like, just the sides of the conference. I brought that up earlier. I mean, the fact that you've got Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan all in Big Ten East, and then the West is Illinois, Purdue, Northwestern, Minnesota. So anytime whoever wins the West is almost guaranteed to get demolished by whoever comes out of the East, and that's just how it is. And I know that's the last year that this is the last year that they're doing it, thankfully. So maybe it'll be more fun kind of going forward. Next up, we got the ACC. You've got Clemson favorite at plus 150, Florida State plus 170. The rest of this is interesting. You got Pitt plus 1,100, North Carolina, same odds, and then Louisville and Miami with the worst odds at plus 2,000. This conference has been like completely down for what seems like forever. Clemson, I think, would be the pick, but I don't know. Miami might be a year or two away, but I would not be surprised if the Big Ten, if the ACC championship game is just Clemson versus Miami, because I'm not too high on Florida State. UNC, you've got Drake May, but everything else on their team's kind of a question mark. So I'm going to go out on a limb here as far as the Miami pick and do Miami Clemson, and then obviously Clemson wins that. But I think this conference this year, I don't think Clemson will make the playoffs. Spoiler, but I think they're going to be a lot better than they were last year with Garrett Riley as the quarterback coach and Kate Klubnik.
Listen, I'm sticking to my guns. I said Drake May wins the Heisman, right? The only way he can win the Heisman is if they do really well. And so I'm taking UNC to win the ACC. I'm a believer. I can't wait to buy into the hype, kind of like people did with Sam Howell, and then he just has like a mid-season and goes. I mean, May will still be like a top 3 pick, even if he has a mid-season. But I remember people were saying this is Sam Howell. They're like, he's going to dethrone Clemson. And then he's like, eh. But I'm taking UNC over Clemson in the finals. Didn't get to make a prediction for the Big Ten. I'm taking Ohio State.
Oh, sorry. I completely just jumped over you.
No, I did just want to say, because I think it was kind of interesting. I think I'm taking Nebraska, actually, to be on the Eastern final, or the Western, finals against Ohio State. I am a huge Matt Rule fan at the college level. Everywhere he goes, he just turns programs around. I mean, everywhere.
Instantly, too.
Places. Yeah, so I just think that he'll bring that same magic. And I remember once he went to Nebraska, they started getting some like pretty decently big name recruits. And like
they've got Jeff Sims from Georgia Tech, I believe. I've heard some good things about him. He actually did pretty well at Georgia Tech, which is not something you expect because it's a school in the ACC that has been relevant since like the 80s or 90s. I think they've been awful.
Like name like more than one Georgia Tech player.
I don't think
in the NFL. Well, ever.
I think in general, I'd have a hard time naming some.
Calvin Johnson, right?
Oh, you were waiting for that one.
Well, that's why I said more than one, because he's the one. I could Luigi Villain, but that's only because he's a Viking.
That's a deep dive on that one.
He's going to make the 53 this year. Anyway.
So you've got Nebraska versus wait, what was the ACC?
Oh, excuse me. I lied. He didn't even go to Georgia Tech. Haha, get trolled. He went to Wake Forest. So
Ohio State over Nebraska was your Big Ten, and then what did you say your ACC was?
I said North Carolina over Clemson. I think that neither of them are going to have a spectacular record, and like you said, I don't think either of them are going to make the playoffs. I think they're both going to sit around 3 losses probably. But we kept saying that last year, and then Clemson just kept freaking winning those like nail-biter games. Every single week I was like, you can't keep getting away with this. But they just kept getting away with it. Yep. Also, hello. Shout out to my mom for watching. She said hi in the comments.
Oh, yeah, I see it now.
So Big 12.
This is the one I probably feel the least confident about, which people would probably be like, why do you feel like the least confident about? Texas is going to win it. The Big 12 this year is odd because you add UCF, Cincinnati, BYU. There's no divisions like last year. We saw how that worked out last year. Houston's in the Division 2 this year. So you added 4 teams that have, for the better part of the last couple of years, just dominated in their respective conferences. I think I'll go with Texas to win it because of the talent they have on the offensive side of the ball, but you can't really count on any consistency from any of these Big 12 teams. Oklahoma will be better, hopefully, than they were last year. Last year, they were absolutely terrible in Brent Venables' first year. But Texas over – this is going to be a shocker. Texas over Texas Tech. I think people are sleeping on Texas Tech. A lot of hype for them as far as in my eyes, just because they've got great quarterback play, great coaching, and I think they're returning a lot of guys on both sides of the ball. But I don't think it'll be enough for them to beat Texas. Texas is just loaded. So I'm drinking the Texas Kool-Aid a little bit. I'm not going to put them in the playoff, but I think this conference will kind of cannibalize each other, and Texas will lose to Bama, and they'll maybe lose to like 1 or 2 other teams. But the conference will be jumbled, and all these games will be close, like the TCU games were last year.
Yeah, I absolutely don't think TCU comes anywhere close to the performance they did last year. I also wanted to say, of the new teams, I think 3 of them could be decent. And, they've all been good, right, in the past. I think BYU just going to get slaughtered. I think that BYU is one of those teams that just doesn't ever play anyone, so they have a good record every year. And I do not think they're going to mesh the Big 12 well. I could be wrong, but I'm actually going to go with Baylor. I just love Baylor, and I think that every year Baylor just kind of overperforms a little bit. I know they did last year too, right? They got pretty close to.
They're always in the conversation.
Yeah. Well, hold on. Maybe I'm completely misremembering, but I'm pretty sure last year they had a really good record. Yeah, they lost to Oak State. They beat Texas last year. Yeah, they only had 2 losses last year, and it was TCU by 2, and then Oklahoma State by 10. I think I'm going to take Baylor over Texas in the finals. They're gonna beat them again.
Really?
Yeah, I know. But like I said, for some reason, Baylor's one of those teams since Matt Rule, shout out Nebraska, that they just kind of have had a really good culture, and they're one of those teams that just never really has anyone individually super stand out. Like I could not name you a single player from Baylor last year off the top of my head. Maybe if I thought about it a little bit, but they play good team football, right? And they go out there and they overperform what they should.
I used to hate watching Big 12 games, but now it's just so entertaining because, from top to bottom, there's not much of a drop-off between any of the teams. I mean, you look at the SEC and you look at your Georgia or Alabama, it's obviously going to be a lot better than Vanderbilt or like a Mississippi State. But I think looking at every single team in this conference, I think you can make a case for them competing in the Big 12 championship game, which is crazy to say. So this conference is going to be really entertaining this year. And then we're going to finish it up with the Pac-12. USC's plus 200, Oregon plus 320, and then Washington at plus 340. I have seen Oregon and Washington flip flop a little bit. I'm sure you're going to know who my pick's going to be because I kind of tipped it earlier. I'm going to say that Oregon beats USC just because of the things that I listed earlier. I think offensively, they're going to be right up there with USC. Maybe they don't have the receivers that USC does, but they have a great offensive line, a great quarterback, some great tight ends there too. But I think the difference between Oregon and USC is USC's defense is just not very good, whereas Oregon, you got Dan Lanning as your head coach, so you know your defense is going to be competitive. They got Kyrie Jackson transferred from Alabama, so I think they're solid on both sides of the ball. Yeah, offensive line, defensive line. So they're going to be my pick.
I got to ask your opinion on one team in the Pac-12. How do you feel about Colorado this year?
I think Colorado has a tough schedule. I think the second game they play is against TCU, so I think. I mean, I don't feel great about.
It's their opener.
It's their opener game. I think I don't feel great about them this year, but it's not. That's not about Dion. I mean, they've done a great job recruiting. I think Dion will be a solid coach for them, but I just think they have their work cut out for them this year, and I actually think the Pac-12 will be a better conference as a whole this year. So I think they'll have a tough time, but they certainly have, some great athletes on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I don't know. So I'm not gonna pick Colorado, right? I was
gonna say,
kind of curious because no, because they're like a trendy team right now, right? With Deion Sanders and all the transfers and Shadur, the quarterback. Mm-hmm. But I think that this year will be a little rough for them. I think that Deion so far has shown that he's a good, rah-rah motivator coach. I don't know how good of an X's and O's coach he is, and I think that that's going to be way more important at a place like Colorado because you're not gonna out talent TCU, you're not gonna out talent Nebraska, you're not gonna out talent USC, you're not gonna out talent Oregon, where you could easily do that at Jackson State. You just have Travis Hunter, the top player in the entire country. Yeah, he's here playing for our HBCU, which is great for HBCUs, and I thought that was really cool. You're not going to have that crazy talent advantage at Colorado, so he could completely prove me wrong. Maybe Deion is an amazing coach, but I think to me right now he's shown he's a good motivator. I'm not going to buy into the Colorado hype train until he shows that he's a good coach as well.
Yeah, I agree.
I will say, I've been talking about it. I'm picking USC. I think USC sneaks in at 4 in the playoffs. I think they'll be the 4th seed.
So who do you think USC will play?
I'm picking them over Washington. I'm sorry, Oregon, but I think that Washington has a really good offense, and they've just been they've also been I don't want to say DBU because obviously not, but they've produced some really good defensive players as well over the past couple of years.
They've produced some good defensive backs, but their secondary as a whole has been pretty bad.
It's pretty interesting, but I think that Washington goes. I think USC beats Washington in the finals. I think it's kind of interesting too that there's not a lot of talk of Utah. Every year they're kind of like a Baylor team to me, where they shouldn't be that good, but then they always end up top 10.
Yeah, and they've won their back-to-back Pac-12 champions. I mean, they've won it 2 years in a row.
So real quick, who's left in the Pac-12? I think after all the changes, who is it?
It's just Cal and Washington State, I believe.
I thought there was 4, but is Stanford still there too?
No, well, that news came out today that I think
really?
Stanford and some other teams were leaving. I think literally that the news broke probably an hour or so ago. I'm slow typing, but
I didn't see that actually.
I think the cool thing too about the Pac-12 this year is I was looking at the quarterbacks after I saw that Jalen Rashada was announced as a starter. You have Bo Nix, Michael Penix, Caleb Williams, DJ, last name I'm not even going to try to pronounce, Uiagalelei. Yeah, you've got DJ Uiagalelei, you've got Rashada, you've got Dante Moore, both Dante Moore and Rashada. Dante Moore for USC or UCLA, Jalen Rashada for Arizona State are both true freshmen, but they're two really highly talented recruits that are going to play right away. So I think the Pac-12 after dark this year with all those quarterbacks, I'm going to be locked into, especially since the conference is basically dissolving. It's not really going to be a conference anymore. I don't know how.
No, this is the last year of the Pac-12.
Isn't Bo Nix like 30 years old? He's surprisingly Bo Nix is still 20. He's only 23, so it just feels like he's been in there for a while.
He has. Cal, Stanford, Oregon State, and Washington State are the four left. An hour ago, it got reported that the ACC is seriously considering adding Stanford and Cal.
Yeah,
so they haven't left yet, but they're having an ACC brass meeting to discuss adding those two, and SMU apparently.
Adding two teams from the opposite side of the country coast to the Atlantic coast. We'll just call it the Coastal Conference.
I mean, hey, we already have that.
It's got a decent ring to it. Real quick, we'll talk about college football playoff predictions and basically college football. We'll say our goodbyes to the last normal year, quote unquote normal year of college football. College football playoff predictions.
Oh Lord. Okay, I'll go first. Okay.
Yeah, I need you to go first.
Real quick,
I've gone back and forth on this.
Real quick, up and down. I think it goes Bama, right? So this is going to be like the coldest take of all time, too. Okay, so be prepared. I think it goes Bama, 1, because they beat Georgia in the SEC championship, in my opinion. Ohio State, Georgia, USC.
I think I'm going to give
vanilla list, but I think that I'll go a little bit. I think that Bama.
No, I mean go with your gut.
No. I was just explaining it a little bit. Why you think? I think that Bama has a question mark at quarterback, but I think that overall, like I said, they're a very deep team compared to the last couple of years, and I think that'll really help them. I think that Ohio State, like I said, has a very easy schedule every year, and I think they beat Michigan. So I think that they're in clear sailing to be second. Or even first. I could see them at 1. I think that Georgia, even though they're the 2-time national champions in a row, 1, winning 3 in a row is even much harder. And 2, they're bound to, lose a game at some point. They also have a question mark at quarterback. They have a question mark
running back.
Yeah, I saw one of their running backs had surgery today, right?
Yeah, he's out for the year. I think that was their third string guy. And then both Dijon Edwards and I can't remember who their starter is, but those guys are banged up too. So I think that's going to catch up to them.
And same with the defense every year. I mean, Alabama kind of went through it as well. You're not going to keep getting equal level replacements every year when your entire team goes to the draft every year. Eventually, someone's going to be weaker. And so I could really see that happening. And then USC, they have the hype. They have the Caleb Williams. Their offense is going to be really good. I think that they'll probably have 1 or 2 losses, but just edge out whoever's in 5th. So.
Okay. I don't want this to be my prediction because it's going to sound just like a complete pick for me. Like, you could probably sit here and guess who I'm going to have.
Oregon, Penn State, Bama, top 3.
Yeah. Not in that order specifically. I think Alabama's going to be number 1. I know a lot of people are talking about the quarterback position, and I posted a little video of Jalen Milroe, I think either it was today or yesterday, and there were a lot of Bama fans that weren't too happy about Jalen Milroe being the starting guy in the comments, but I don't think that this team is going to have to depend on quarterback this year. They just need somebody who can run the ball, who's a physical runner, because the running game is they're going to run the ball probably 48% of the time, maybe even up. Like, they're going to run the ball a lot with the running backs they have and the offensive line they have. So I'm going to pick Alabama at 1. And then 2, I'm going to go Ohio State, like I touched on earlier. Loaded at receiver, great defense, quarterback question mark, just like Alabama, but they'll figure it out. I mean, they've got great running backs too with Travion Henderson and Mayan Williams is their backup running back too. So those guys will run the ball well. And then for 3, I'm gonna go Oregon. I think they win the Pac-12. I think their offense is going to be great. I think Bo Nix will have a good year, win the Heisman.
That's fine. Dark horse, etc.
And then 4 is going to be Penn State. They're kind of getting slept on, but at the same time, there are certain media outlets and media personnel or personalities that are speaking highly of them. I think you're returning 2 guys, Katron Allen and Nick Singleton, who both combined rushing last year. I think rushed for like over 2,000 yards and had well over double-digit touchdowns, like I think in the 20s. And then pairing that with a great defense and a great quarterback with Drew Aller, I might be a year too early on them. I think that 2024 is going to be the year that they're going to be thought of super highly, but I think this year they're going to sneak in, and I think Penn State and Ohio State are going to be very close in some aspects. Like, I think when they play, obviously they play every year. I think Ohio State will beat them because it's in Columbus. And last year, we saw that game at home for Penn State they got super close but couldn't get it done. So I think both those teams have one loss, and I think your playoff is Alabama versus Penn State, and then Ohio State versus Oregon.
Interesting.
I think minus Ohio State, that was pretty much my same prediction. I can just see the path for each one of the teams on here.
I think it's kind of interesting. I know you said Penn State is 1 or 2 years away. I think they're 1 year away because the problem is 2 years away. Drew Aller is probably not there anymore. And
well, I meant like this year and next year. Like
gotcha. Okay, yeah. Because I could definitely see next year them competing. It'd be his junior season. So hopefully, if he's the guy that he's supposed to be, they'll have a great, they lose. They'll lose what's his name, the left tackle. But
I can't pronounce his name. That's all you.
Yeah, they lose the Penn State left tackle, who was like a potential top 5 draft pick this year.
Yeah, you've got probably the best offensive tackle in the country. You've got 3 All-Americans on the other side of the ball. You've got 2 phenomenal running backs. I think receivers kind of a question mark for them, but they've got a couple guys in the transfer portal that I think will step up. And then I think underrated for them is their tight ends this year with Theo Johnson and then Tyler Warren. So that's why I'm a total homer, and I'm going to pick all 3 of my teams to be in the playoffs.
All right. Real quick, though. You ready? Olu Fashanu.
Oh, wasn't that hard?
Yeah, I could be completely butchering it too. His full first name is Olumoyiwa Fashanu.
Now you're just showing off.
So, like I said, I could sit here and say whatever I want, and you'll believe me, and that's the best part because I could be completely butchering that. It could be pronounced Jeff for all I know. But
you're right. I wouldn't fact check you on it. I would just take your word for it because you've been saying DJ Uiagalelei for years. So.
Uiagalelei and Tua Tagovailoa even before that.
Well, that one. I got that.
That one's easy for us because we saw him a bunch, but
yeah, we had to learn his name. We didn't have much of a choice in that.
Exactly.
We'll finish up with kind of just a depressing goodbye summary to college football as we know it. We've talked about a couple teams joining new conferences this year. Next year, obviously, you have Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC. The Pac-12 is going to be nothing. So I guess I want to get your thoughts on how you feel about kind of like the future of college football. I feel good about it. It's going to be completely different than it's ever been, but I think the NIL stuff will get straightened out and be a little more strict and will be kind of a wild west like it is now. But I feel good about it. The games will certainly be better. Who knows how the playoff expansion will go, but I'm somebody who believes that you should have more teams in it. It's a slippery slope, but I'm excited for the future.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that more teams is almost always a good thing, right? There's a point where it's too many. Like, I don't want 32 teams playing in the college football playoff. But I think that 4 was way too few because every year, and I will preface this by saying I know the goalposts will just move, but every year there's always like a one or two teams where you're like, you could make a legitimate argument that they were a top 4 team, right? Last year it happened. We were on the side of that last year. Oh, we're better than TCU. They had a better record, etc. But I think that will there still be a problem? Top 8. Oh, this team should have been 8 instead of this team. Sure, it's always going to happen with like arbitrary cutoffs. But I am really excited. I do think it's going to be able to showcase more teams without taking spots of teams that rightfully deserved it. Like Cincinnati 2 years ago, for example. Did they deserve it record-wise? Yeah, but did you know they were going to get clapped? Yes. Like everyone who had eyes could see that coming.
Yeah.
As far as conference realignment goes, I think it's interesting, and I know you need conferences, but like I think I'm just going full like anarchy. And I'll say I don't really care about conferences. I think not having conferences would open it up to be way more interesting on what you could schedule. Obviously, again, you need conferences, but like merging into like super conferences like they seem to be doing, I like more variety. More teams have like, Georgia, for example.
New rivalries too.
Right. And like Georgia, for example, take Georgia. They've been a very good team these past couple of years. No one can deny that, right? They've been the best team in college football the last 2 years. But the counter argument is always like they play a cupcake schedule. I said that this year, or like I said that earlier in the show. And it's because they have
that's the SEC East, right?
Right. So combining, adding more teams gets you a little bit more creative. You can schedule the better teams. You can, kind of prove yourself a little bit more.
We don't know what's going to become of it, but we do know one thing's for sure is that the football games will be better.
Right.
And that's what's most important for me. I don't want to sit around and see Alabama versus, some nobody team. Like I want to be intrigued by all these games. I don't want to have to sit here and go, they're playing this team this week, so let me go run some errands at halftime of this game because it'll be 45-0 or something.
Well, even this year, like I'm excited that Alabama football is going to be back, but like, do I care because we're playing MTSU week 1, like Middle Tennessee? It's kind of boring, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if it's not boring, then something went terribly wrong, and all of our quarterbacks just like dropped dead of a heart attack on the field or something.
Yeah, and I mean, like the flip side of that is the next week will be the most stressful week ever when Texas comes into town. So
yeah, but I'm definitely excited for the future of college football as well. So I think that even though it's kind of sad to watch a conference crumble before our eyes, we shall see better conferences rise from the ashes like a phoenix.
Yeah, I mean, and that's pretty much all we have for tonight. I always we'll end all the phoenix rising from the ashes from Kyle. Thank you everybody for watching. We're gonna try and have a regular schedule. If I had $1 for every time I said that, I'd probably have $10.
I finally, for the first time in quite a while, I'm an employed man, and I have a set schedule for once. I'm not, like working swing hours, so should be able to set it up better.
You're good. I'm pretty inconsistent too, but we'll have guests on here, and it's obviously more entertaining once the season starts because you can talk. I mean, next week we'll hopefully have a show on Wednesday, and we'll talk about Florida playing Utah the next day on Thursday night, and then a couple other big games that's next week. I think UNC and South Carolina play each other. That'll be a good one. You got Drake May versus Spencer Rattler. So we finally reached the point where we don't have to sit around and speculate much at all. We've got college football, and we get a little bit of a teaser this week with it. So thank you everybody again for watching, and have a good rest of your week.
Yep. Bye.